If you want to get what you want, help other people get what they want. If you walk down the streets, you're gonna see like 5 or 6 restaurants. Does that mean that you shouldn't open a new restaurant? I don't think so. I still talk weekly with customers. Like really weekly, I have at least 3 or 4 conversations with our customers. And if you look at other CEOs, they will not want to do it.
See this guy right here? Yes, this guy. He is the founder of a $150 million company. He started Lempire with $1,000 and his girlfriend paying the rent to his home. Since then, he's made over $47 million across 6 different products. He also sold one business after growing it to over $600,000 in annual revenue in just 18 months. This episode is a deep dive in how you can do this, going from $0 up to your first $1 million. We're documenting exactly the steps you need to do to find a great big idea, to master your outreach, to master your sales, to build a great product, build a great team for you to hit your first $1 million. What's up, people? Before we get into this video, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment down below so we can get bigger and better guests for you every single week. Let's get straight into the video right now. Let's kick off. Well, man, I'm excited for this. Been a long time coming. And before we start, I think one of the most interesting observations I have of Lemlist, well, obviously there's Lempire, which sits on top, but of Lemlist, is that it's the only product that I have to cancel my subscription for because it works so well. Genuinely, every time I use it, it works, and I cancel my subscription afterwards. I genuinely hand on my heart. So for the past 2 years, I would get the subscription, I would run a shitload of sales outreach, and then I would get the leads I need, and then I would sign the clients I need, and then I just cancel the deal afterwards. I need to get a better way to fulfill clients, man. But yeah, it's very impressive what you've been able to build for the last couple of years.
No, that's really like the best testimonial ever. I'm gonna take that part of the podcast and put it on our website, I guess now.
I don't know, that's awesome. I want to get into just really going through the entire the details for bringing someone 0 to 1 million, right? But I want to start somewhere interesting, which is I heard you mention that most founders are looking for excuses. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think overall, like like everyone's looking for a way out. Everyone looking for something that's not working. Everyone's trying to understand why they're not generating revenue. I think as founders, when you take the leap of faith and you go all in on a project, you really need like to believe in yourself, because most people won't. I mean, unless you are like very, very well surrounded, but often like people don't really like to see someone they know change, because it also reminds them that they're not taking action, they're not doing something outside of their comfort zone. And I feel like when it gets really hard, which it always will when you launch a company, people are looking for way outs. And I think like often founders, believe that it doesn't work because the product is not good enough. It doesn't work because their team is not the right team, etc., etc. But for me, in the end, it's on the founder's shoulder to make a business work. If you can't do sales, learn how to do sales, because sales for me is pretty much everything. Like a lot of people believe that they can build an awesome product and that everyone will come and use it. It's not the case. Even product-led growth companies started as sales-led companies. The founder was outreaching to potential customers, onboarding them personally. Whenever you want to hire someone, it's exactly the same as sales. If you want the top talents, you need to outreach to the one that, get maybe 100 job offers every single year. And you need to convince them to join you on the adventure. So I think like people will always find excuses. And I think like if you start acknowledging the fact that you're the owner of your own success, and that whenever you face a challenge, you can always overcome it by learning, overcome it by getting coached, overcoming by, making mistakes, then eventually you get better. And I think this is when you start owning your destiny.
100%. And that's where like a lot of entrepreneurs, they're successful in other ways too, right? So it could be in fitness. I know you're into like health and fitness as well as myself, or even just taking responsibility for their life. They're usually the one that can control the destiny, right? Are you familiar with Stephen Pressfield at all? talks about the wall of resistance. So he's a great book called Turning Pro, which you would really like. He also has The Art of War. Yeah, The Art of War, or is it The War of Art? Art of War, I think it is. And basically talks about the wall of resistance, saying that most people, when he splits into an amateur or pro mindset just for life. And someone who's an addict could have the same example. But when they have the amateur mindset, they're basically coming up against a wall of resistance and looking for a way out, like a cope or someone to blame or so on. But basically the crossing the kind of the chasm basically is coming up with resistance. So if you can push through those resistors, that's when basically you have like more of a professional mindset, and whatever you do, basically you're kind of like all in. And having that kind of like all in mentality means that when you do come up against it, you'll find a coach, you'll find a tutor, you'll buy a course, you'll basically be able to solve that problem because chances are someone else has done it anyway. And it's a beautiful book because he went through kind of his story and his journey, how he ran from his problems for so many years as a writer, and then basically was working in like these picking cherries and apples and then swapping back over then to writing when he had the money. And I thought it was very, very interesting because like it's never been easier, right? To some degree to be able to build stuff. We have the availability. So when how you have these excuses, it's almost like the excuses are also never been more as well at the same time.
Yeah,
right?
And to build up on what you say, it's never been easier like to build something, but actually I think like most people, especially like in our current like era, I think are a bit too weak. Like everyone wants, the easy way. Everyone wants the overnight success. No one understands the true power of delayed gratification. No one understands like what sacrifice it takes, to be at the top or like just reach like summit. So I think, like social media are also like part of it when you have like always like instant gratification and dopamine hit every time you post, every time you do something. I think people like, don't realize that they can push themselves. And every time it gets a bit hard, they give up. And I think it's a shame because if you live an intentional life, meaning you set like a goal that might sound like unrealistic for many, but that's also linked to your passion and what you want to accomplish. If that goals align with what you're ready to sacrifice, then, you're going to enjoy the journey no matter what happens, no matter the up, no matter the downs. You know that you will do it for a reason. And I think that's the power of delayed gratification overall. It's like, can you like sacrifice your current state so your future self can be proud of you?
Man, where did that come from for you? Because like when I even observe the way like your attitude and everything, like you're always smiling, right? The company's worth like 150 million and you're like, if I saw you in the street or I saw you in Cape Town, you're like chill as fuck. But where does that kind of mindset come from? Because like that's the kind of rootless side, I guess, in many regards, right? That you've kind of controlled and tamed and basically can work with. Oops, sorry, my camera just jumped. Oop. Yeah, it's back. Never mind. So that's like the other side, basically. So how have you been able to kind of build those other principles? Because they're very foundational principles to build huge, successful companies, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think I got lucky. Like my parents, like they come from a very like modest background. Like my grandparents were like farmers. My parents, like they don't have any degree. So they work really like their ass off for jobs that were not paying like really well. But since I was a kid, there were rules where I lived. So I could go out and play in the street with my friend when I was like younger, as long as, I would do my homework and get good grades. So I knew that I had to be like super focused on doing things the right way. So later on, I could have fun. Then, it was like if I was doing the right thing, or even when I was maybe like 10-ish, my granddad, after he retired, he didn't have like a lot of money. So he would work on like construction field, like to help like build houses, etc. And during the summer, we would go there and I would help like move like bricks from the car to like the house. And at the end of the week, I would get maybe like the equivalent of $2 or $3. I was definitely not good at business back then. But for me, like all the efforts was rewarded by money. And when you are like, I don't know, like 10 and you start getting money for the work you do, you understand that sometimes like suffering can lead to, like more reward in the end. And eventually, like with that money, I would like maybe buy little things and then start trading it at school and get like even bigger things. So I understood two things. One, it's like if you put in the work, you get rewarded. And then with the money that you get, even if it's not a lot, you can always purchase things that in people's mind will get a greater value and leverage it afterwards to get the thing you want. There is a quote that says, I think like, if you want to get what you want, help other people get what they want. and I think it's the same. Like, for example, for, like simple example, you have someone like, I'm currently in Cape Town. There is like a place called Lion's Head, which is a place you have to climb up there. So you have to walk for maybe like, I don't know, depending on your condition, let's say 2 hours if you're like in very basic condition. And at the top, obviously it's like super hot. It's South Africa, you have sun, etc. People, like a lot of people don't have water. If I'm on top and I meet a guy who's like a billionaire, like he just climbed all his way up and I'm selling water, what price is he going to be able to pay? A lot, because that's what he wants. So the value of the water totally changed because you are like in a unique space rather than if I was just down the street at a shop and I try to sell him water, he wouldn't care. There are plenty. So for me, it's always a matter of how can you find like those really valuable things for the right people at the right time, and then you're good to go.
And man, like as you get older, and you're not even an old dude, right? But you see the bigger opportunities that lie within there. And if you ever read Cash Advertising, he always quotes like the deeper like pursuits, right? Which is like survival. It's like sex, relationships, status. I don't even think money was in it. Money wasn't actually one of the key factors. It was like a secondary factor. But knowing that, basically it's like make people money, save people time, improve their status. And that's kind of like what we do with our podcast, for instance. But then in contrast, as you got into Lemlist and Lempire, you were just putting that on fire, basically, wasn't it? Effectively, because you met such a big need, basically. And like your kind of story from like having a lead agency, seeing all the problems, and then being like, okay, we're going to recreate this and build an even better tool, made it like the obvious choice. Like, and would you consider Lempire or Lemlist to be the main sales outreach tool in the world at the moment?
We have like competitors based in the US that have raised like hundreds of millions of dollars. So obviously, like they are like a bit.
They're always them.
They're a bit bigger than we are. No, but it's quite funny because like I think from our stage, meaning like they were created maybe like 5 or 6 years prior to us. But if we look at the current growth versus what they accomplished, I think we're like faster and at a higher stage with $0 raised. So I would say that our trend is to later on and at the goal, like overtake them. But yeah, I mean, for me, what's good, it's like markets are huge. A lot of people, are afraid of competition, but I think like it's really like the wrong way of doing things. I remember when I started my first businesses, every time I had an idea like to launch a business and someone would tell me, oh yeah, but there is this tool or that tool that does exactly the same. I would be like crushed. I would be so discouraged. I would be fuck. I thought I was creative, etc., etc. But later on, I realized like if you don't know about something that already exists, maybe it's because they're not marketing properly. Maybe it's because the market is so huge that there is room for everyone. Like it's the same. Like if you walk down the streets, you're going to see like 5 or 6 restaurants. Does that mean that you shouldn't open a new restaurant? I don't think so. Like all the studies and research that have been made shows that when in a street you have like more and more restaurants, it actually doesn't reduce the amount of money that they are making. It's actually the opposite because it becomes like the restaurant street. So people like come because they want to eat in that street and they know they will have the option they want. So it drives a lot more traffic and hence a lot more revenue. So for me, if I had to start all over again, I would pick a crowded market because it means that the product market fit already exists, but I would focus on a niche that is underserved. Because if you go back to pretty much like every success stories that exist today, you mentioned like earlier that you were working with Salesforce. Salesforce is a really good example. Right now, Salesforce, they are making the most of their revenue with the biggest enterprise in the world. Talking like companies with hundreds of thousands of employees. But if you look at where they started focusing on small companies. Why? Because their product wasn't ready, because it was super important for them to get like a lot of feedback so they could iterate, etc. So they started focusing on a niche of like the smallest companies in tech. And step by step, they started expanding. And once they expanded, essentially you have this cycle where you start super niche, then you start to expand, then you want to go up market. So all the features you're developing are more like oriented towards enterprise. And then what happens is that your product actually become irrelevant for the niche that made you successful. And this is when market opportunities happen. This is why you always have cycles whenever you have like crowded markets. And this is why a company, for example, like Pipedrive, managed to come after Salesforce and HubSpot and eventually like grew to $100 million in annual recurring revenue by focusing on that specific niche. So for me, it's
That's wild. That's wild. Because you would think, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you would assume that people would stay in there initially, like as someone who's outside. But it makes perfect sense, right? It's why we've moved on to even enterprise clients, or we're moving up to enterprise clients. But to your point, there's a point when you're ready, and there's a point when you're not ready. You need to learn and get feedback early on, right? But it's like everyone wants to jump up there, but they're not willing to do the work to get into that position in the beginning, right? But it's very interesting because like there's room at the top for everyone, and also if you have 1 or 5% of market share, you can still make a multi-7-figure business that you can sell, right? That's the kind of idea here, is that you don't need to be. So let's take a step back. So on the path to making the first million, you're looking for the crowded market, and that would be, at odds what people would usually say. Now, talk me through like the idea process. I like some of your videos on that being like a good versus great idea.
Yeah.
How do you decipher the difference?
For me, to be honest, like when it comes to the idea, once you have picked your market, so first, the first question is, how do you pick your market? For me, there are like basically like 3 options. Option 1, you've been part of a specific industry and you have a unique insight. To give you an example, I was running sales campaigns for companies around the globe with an agency, and I was using pretty much every single sales automation tool on the market. And I found that even though they were saying put your sales on autopilot, it was not really the case. There were tons of manual work. It was really annoying. They didn't offer like a lot of personalization, even though personalization was key to actually get meeting booked. So I got like so frustrated that I had a unique insight, and I decided to solve a problem that I had for myself. And I realized many other people had that same problem. So the industry and the market was well known, but I had like a unique take on that position. Option 2, it's a market you're passionate about and you know people in that market. So for example, I don't know, it can be like your wife, friends all work in a specific industry, or your friend actually work in a specific industry that you really love, or you've met that guy that at a hotel, at a bar or whatever, that just like gives you like insight on an industry and you start being passionate about it, and you know that they can introduce you to that market. Once you have that, then everything becomes easier because you already have kind of like your first customers to test the product. And option 3, which is the hardest, is you don't know anyone, but it's still like part of your passion. And you are good at sales, so you know you can outreach to people and you know you'll make it happen. So once you first have like this first step, I would, if it's your first business, I would focus on 1 or 2 maybe, but the first option for me is the best. And then once you have that, this is the time where you need to pick up like the right idea. So what I love, to be honest, especially when it's the first business, is to find something that already exists that you can improve. And like if you look at how ideas have been created and how, we've been developing things year after year, it all comes down to small improvements. Before, we had cars, we had basically like the wheels, and then the wheels, we put that, with horses, then people were sitting on there, then we started like moving everything from that. Then, we build engine, and then we're like, okay, actually an engine plus wheels, that sounds like a good combination. Let's make cars. So it's always the same. So for me, it's like take something that already exists. And after that, the way I would do it is I would go, like to if you want, let's take an example, and you want to build like a software. If you want to build a software business, I would go to website reviews like G2 Crowd, Captera, etc. I would find the product that I want to improve. I would go to that product. I would look at all the negative reviews, and I would see what people complain about. Then I would go on Twitter. I would search for like what people are complaining about again on that product, or on Reddit, etc. And from there, this is where I would build my pre-audience of people I would like to reach out to and serve better. So once you have that, this is when you find like a profitable market. And your profitable market is essentially like people who are already paid customers, because they left a review, they must be paid customers, and who have like enough buying power that essentially they will be able to purchase your product. And ideally, they are part of a growing market, which means that, for example, if you take like if you take salespeople, you know that every single year there's going to be tens of millions of new salespeople around the globe, maybe hundreds. If you take like CEOs of companies with 10,000 plus employees, the market is not growing that much every single year. You're not going to find many more CEOs of 10,000 plus companies in a year. So I will always find a market that is accessible, meaning that you have an entry point, as I mentioned, option 1, 2, or 3, or that you can outreach easily. And I would also take a growing market, because if you're on a growing market, chances are that every single year your market becomes new again. So you can target new people, and it's basically a lot easier to grow when you do that.
All right, people, we're just going to take one short little break for a little update about Podcast University. So if you enjoy podcasts like this and you want to start your own podcast, head down to the links down below to Podcast University. This is a learning platform that I've built to help people like you build, launch, and scale your own podcast. I wasted many years doing this, making it all up as I go. So I put everything together in a very seamless and easy to follow course for you guys to follow and just learn exactly how to do it. So if you want to bypass a lot of the mess with your podcast, check out the links down below to Podcast University, and I will show you exactly how to launch and scale your own podcast. Your LinkedIn Sales Navigator, when you refresh it, you come up with new people every year. I want to dig into maybe some of the aspects there you mentioned around the purchasing power. So this is quite interesting. So I run a B2B business, so the purchasing power, and I also want to dig into the CEO list, right? So we do B2B, and sometimes I think B2B can almost be easier than B2C. And I'll tell you why, because like generally when you interact with someone, they kind of know that it's like about sales, or it's about a product, or about a service. They're a bit kind of more educated, put it that way. But B2C, I kind of get scared on sometimes, because it's like you need so much of a big critical mass, or you need like a lot more volume of people, right? And I know you're like an excellent community builder. It's like a big skill that you have. So like, how do you think about that? Because like with the purchasing power, we'll give a bad example. So like if you're selling, I don't know, like insurance to students are fucking broke. They're just like, oh, I'm not going to get sick. I don't need it, right? Now it is like a growing market, or it's like a stabilized market, but it's like it's not a starving crowd. They're not going to have the purchasing power. So how do you kind of think about that philosophy? Because for Lemlist and for your other products, it's almost like an obvious choice, right? I think that's where people get stuck for it. They're in the wrong place.
It's a really good question, and I think to me it always comes down to like positioning. Because for example, you say like students are a starving crowd and they don't have purchasing power. I agree with you. But if you look very closely at how many students have an iPhone, you realize that the purchasing power is actually there. It's just like the perceived value. An iPhone versus like a health insurance is not quite there. And for me, that's like the power of brand. I think in B2C, you must build a strong brand. If you don't have a strong brand, you'll never do anything. Whereas in B2B, even if your brand is not that strong, but you are really good at building trust, then you can succeed easily. So I tend to agree with you on the fact that I think you can make more money more easily in B2B. But in B2C, I feel like if you have the secret sauce to building a brand, because, I don't know, you just have the right way of approaching a certain target market, then the cumulative effect that you can build and the traction you can get on B2C, for me, can be insane. Because B2B, it compounds. Because for B2B, it's pretty like, it's pretty basic. Like people will buy, as you mentioned earlier, either because you help them make more money or save time. In B2C, it's a bit different. Like they can buy because of their health, their wealth, their status. It's the purchasing decision are not, I would say, like influenced by the same factors and parameters.
So tell me this, from the master community builder, how is that brand built and how is the community built?
Yeah, it's for me, it's a good question, but I really like what Brian Chesky was saying, like the CEO of Airbnb. Even in a B2C product, all you need is 100 true fans. And I think that people who launch businesses are often afraid of their customers. So if you look at what we did when I launched Lemlist, I spent 18 months being the only one doing customer support, meaning that I was the only one answering every single ticket online. So I had like intercom open almost 24/7, and I would answer and talk with my customers. And what I've realized is that most people, they don't want to do this. Even now, like the company is making we crossed $23 million in annual recurring revenue, highly profitable, $8 million in EBITDA. I still talk weekly with customers. Like really weekly, I have at least 3 or 4 conversations with our customers. And if you look at other CEOs, they will not want to do it. And if you want to build a true community, like if someone reach out to me, and even if they're not customers, actually, if they reach out to me and they want help on a specific topic, like they send me, for example, like, here is the business I do. Here is where I'm struggling. What would you do in that situation? I would always spend the time to answer with a very specific response and as many insights as I can from my learnings. Like, this is what I do. So for me to build a community, you need to be passionate about helping people. And I think a lot of people are not just passionate. Like they want to make money, they want to have the fame, they want to do like all the nice stuff. But for them, helping others is not a top priority. And if you look at what we did with Lemlist, at first, like in the community, it was pretty simple. Like I would run, if we look at our growth loop, basically, it's step 1. I built a product where I knew the exact need that people might have because it was my need. So that's also like a good thing to do, like solve your own problems, essentially. From there,
exactly what we did.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the best because a lot of people will tell you, yeah, you need to be careful because you don't represent your entire market, etc., etc. In my opinion, we're 7 billion people. If you have a specific problem, chances are that there are at least 10 million other people in the world who have the exact same problem. Like probabilistic speaking, to be honest, it's you will find others. So once you have that, once we started having that, I was step 1, eating my own dog food. So using my product to actually launch sales prospecting campaign. The one that would work, I would write deep down articles explaining why they would work. And the one that didn't work, I would not talk about it. So from these campaigns, I would basically be on meetings with people. I would be able to close deals, start making money the same way you do it for your agency. And you cancel your subscription afterwards, which I don't recommend. and once I had like the meeting booked, I would basically invite all those people inside a community where I would share, with them very dedicated insights on what works, what doesn't work. Then, they would ask questions, they would give feedback, they would think like, hey, could we do X, Y, Z? Or hey, I'm stuck with this and that. From their problem, I would recreate more content to help them, and they would be really grateful for it. Their insights will allow me to improve also my product. So we would develop like new features, new add-on, etc. And from that, I would go back to using my product, and this time leveraging the feature that they had asked for as specific when they give specific feedback, and the loop goes back again. Because once you start doing that, what happens is that people are going to keep talking about you because they're going to be like, and to build also a true community, which is something I forgot to mention, but I think it's like the foundation, is to mention very clearly what's your mission and where you want to take your company. Because from day one, what I did is I told everyone that I wanted to build the best sales automation platform ever created in the world. That's still my goal. Like every day, like this is what I want to do. So for me, when you do that and you keep repeating it, then people, want to be part of the adventure. Because in the end, what's in it for them? It's like, if you manage to do this, they're going to get better results. They're going to be able to close more deals. They're going to be able to make more money. And if they see you trying and trying every single day, if, like some of them, when you say that for the first time, I remember when I got started, like people were like, who the fuck is that guy? Like, why is he saying that? Like, yeah, of course, yes, he wants to create the best sales automation platform. Thank you for that. But then, when they see you like doing things every single week, then they're like, why the fuck is he posting on LinkedIn? Why is he doing this with his French accent, etc., etc.? Like haters. But then, like after a few months, they're like, you know what, maybe I'm going to give it a try. And then it's like, oh yeah, it works actually. Or like, oh yeah, I'm going to give feedback. Oh, he's answering my message when I send him a message. Oh, he's doing X, he's doing Y. And then after like a year, everyone is like, yeah, but like from the beginning, I knew that you would succeed. I remember.
Man, that's always the fucking case. Man, I'll actually send you my post on that. It's like day one, they say like, he's not going to last 3 weeks. After 6 months, they say, oh, he's so fucking annoying. After a year, they say, oh yeah, like, you're getting a bit of traction. And then after 2 years, they ask you for your help. That's always the case, right? Yeah. But it's with everyone, because it's breaking the belief, shattering the internal belief and bringing them across, man. And I can't believe you're that close to the product and to the business, right? Because that's the reason why it works, right? And that you almost forget that those things happen. And a friend said to me recently, he was like, you still take your sales calls? And I was like, yes, I take my fucking sales calls. And he was like, why? Just bring someone else in. And I'm like, because I can find out what we should be doing by getting the feedback, right? And it's a great book. You might actually would like this. It's called Gap Selling.
Yeah, from Keenan.
By a guy called Keenan. Yeah, I'm actually interviewing him in a couple of weeks, but I love the philosophy. Right?
We spent 3 weeks on a bus together in the US.
No way! Yeah. What the fuck, man? I've never seen him, but like, I haven't seen much of his videos, but like the way he writes and everything. What was your impression?
Get ready for it. Is a puncher. Is a professional puncher.
Yeah, man. I have a fucking crazy story, even just with him in that book. But why I love that approach basically is just because like when you figure that out, you like can't unlearn it, and you realize that all you're doing is trying to get people to realize the pain that they have, and then bring them to the new path, right? And that's what your guys are able to do so effectively.
And I really like his approach. To gap selling. What I really really like, it's like digging to understand the true problem. So, like whenever someone is telling you like, hey, I want to lose weight, ask why. I want to lose weight because I want to look good. Most people would stop there and they would focus on like, hey, here's a like weight loss program so you look good. No, ask why again. Why do you want to look good now? Like, why now? I mean, you're like 35 years old. Like you've been looking like shit for 35 years. Like what's happening now? Oh, you've met that girl. Okay. So you want to look good for that girl, but why? Yeah, because you're in love with her. Okay. So, like the more you dig, the more you're going to understand why people want to do things. And the minute you understand what their true why, the easier it is for you to find the right solution. Because maybe actually, like the issue is not like your weight, is not like looking good. It's just like your self-confidence. And to boost self-confidence, maybe like doing sports is going to help you boost self-confidence, but just because you're going to feel good, not because you're going to look ripped and super handsome, etc. So I think it's super important. And most people think that to be a good sales rep, you need to be like kind of like a shark, someone like always smiling, like talking a lot, making people laugh, etc. But actually, like during like my sales calls, I mostly don't speak. I ask one question. When people like answer, I always leave 2 or 3 seconds of silence. So often they keep picking up again. When, like I feel like they didn't give the full answer, I just ask, do you mind elaborating on this? then, like they continue. And the more you listen, the more you're going to understand what true problem people are facing, and the easier it will be for you to give them the right solution. And sometimes you are not the right solution, and that's fine. And people appreciate it.
100%.
Because it's better. Like, yeah, that's, I think you agree on that, but it's like, if you become really good at sales, you have like it starts becoming easier and easier to close deals. But the fine line is also being able to say no to the deals that are not the right one. Because often it happens that people are looking for something that we're not doing. And it's fine. It's fine to say it. It's fine to say that it's not a fit. Because if you have people coming in and you've oversold and you can't deliver, what's going to happen? They're going to churn, they're going to be unhappy, and they're going to say that your service sucks. Is that like the type of things you want people to say? Probably not. It's always best to focus on the striving. Yeah, definitely.
It's always the impact. And man, what's so perfect around that as well is the fact that when you do a proper like gap selling approach, you can basically just be like, you basically articulate to the individual why they're not a good fit, and they might even want to come back. So I'll give you a very good example that even happened today. It was, so the gap selling approach is like understanding the facts, the problem, the impact, the root cause, and the future. And basically, after doing that, the gap wasn't big enough. And I just said, you know what? We recoup in 6 months, 12 months, maybe it'll be big enough, but it wasn't something that was a big enough investment for that individual, as in emotional investment, not financial investment. Therefore, it just was better not to go through the process for them. I think that's way more trustworthy than bringing someone in. And the time delay effect, I think, which is very interesting, which I really observed from your work too, is the fact that when you do the work now and you build a community, build a brand, that doesn't take effect for a month. It takes effect 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And this is why you have probably such a fucking low churn rate, right? Because time tells the ultimate tell. Did you do the work? And also, is your work shit? I always think about that, right? It's been a big philosophy over everything really in the past couple of years.
You want to know like a funny story? I still have people replying to my cold email campaigns from 2018.
What? How?
Some people, it's like, like they see me on social media, they type my name in their mailbox and they realize that I reached out. And now they want a demo. Even though I followed up 5 times, I had 0 replies. It's really fun. Like, it's really funny.
How do you stay like, let's say like at a high frequency with sales and like your mood and everything? And it's really like admirable about you, because like you're on the front line with sales, you're building product. You're not just doing sales and you're not just doing product. You're doing everything, right? So how do you stay at that level, right? Because it's been so many years for you.
Yeah, to be honest, like I think this year it's like changing. So I feel like I'm still very like external facing. So I spend time with our customers, but mostly like to talk about their success. So like customer stories, etc. This is something I still do and I love it. I still answer every people who has like issues or troubles, etc. So that's also important. I don't really do like sales calls anymore, like as closing calls, because we have a team for that. And, like from time to time, I would listen to sales calls and maybe give like some feedback. But otherwise, like I try to, like I've delegated to the team and I trust them and it's important to do so. And now I think like since I hired like a COO, so Chief Operating Officer, I think like the transition period was basically until the end of 2023. And now my focus is really more like the top of funnel. So I spend a lot of time with people who are trying like to grow their business, to understand what pain they are solving. And my goal is really like with, so Lemlist is obviously like the maybe most well-known of our software, but we have several. And the goal is to kind of like build a suite of products that helps people grow their business. And for each product that we develop, we have only one rule. We must be power users of what we want to develop. If we're not power users, it doesn't make sense for us to develop it, because the goal is we don't want to teach something that we don't use ourselves. We want to be like as authentic as possible. We don't want to tell you, because, like it's the same. Like if you look at all the, biggest companies in the world, like if you take Coca-Cola, for example, and you say, okay, like if Coca-Cola was like so good, would you have like your children, like drink this in the morning, at lunchtime, and, at dinner? And the person's going to say no, like, but if I ask myself, like, should you use Lemlist morning, lunch, and dinner? Yes, I do it, like I send outreach campaigns. I love that. It allows me to meet with people like I thought I could never meet. So yeah.
Man, I love that. Your future kids are going to be using it going through school.
I hope so.
I want to ask you about your sales process yourself, as in your outreach strategy, because what's very unique from your scenario is that, like, you're a power user for yourself and then for different things you do. And what's so beautiful about sales is, like, when you learn it, you can transfer it over. So to give you an analogy, I was doing sales for my podcast for many years, for many years before my company was built. So I was convincing people to come on my show and that give the transfer of knowledge for the platform and distribution. Like, that was the exchange of value. And then as the show grew, it didn't become easier. I was going after bigger guests, and then the platform, as it grew, was a bigger, more powerful tool. And I just kind of intuitively brought that over into a business world because it was the exchange of value and I was able to do it. But my sales education is very, like, limited. It's not like I went off and learned lots of stuff. So how do you kind of go about that writing philosophy, some theories and practices you've been kind of implementing? All right, guys, one short little update for Voix. I want to give a short little overview about my own company, my media company called Voix. So if you are a company or you are an enterprise looking to grow your brand and looking to grow your podcast, feel free to reach out to work with us at Voix. What we do is a fully fledged end-to-end management of your podcast. We take care of the strategy, the consulting, we take care of the growth, the management, we take care of all the editing, all the boring stuff, so you can focus on creating good podcasts and growing your brand. If you want to grow your podcast and get to new users, if you want to grow your business, generate more revenue and all that good stuff, check out the links down below to Voix. You can follow through to schedule a call with our team, or else you can fill out the application form to see if you're qualified to work with us. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So the first thing is, in today's world, if you don't do multi-channel, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So multi-channel outreach is basically the most important, because what I've realized is that some people will never pick up the phone and they will always answer email. Maybe they're going to answer LinkedIn too. But some people will always pick up the phone and never answer their emails nor their LinkedIn. And some people will not answer their email, not pick up the phone, but answer on LinkedIn. So if you're in B2B, there are like 3 things that you must do, which are email, LinkedIn, and phone. If you don't do those 3, you're basically like missing on a lot. That's for me like the first rule. Then the foundation of sales, especially in B2B, as we said it earlier, is trust. To give you like the simplest example, if tomorrow you tell me, hey G, if you give me like $100 today, I can give you like $1,000 in a week. I've got this fancy, like really nice thing, etc. Like, because I trust you, I'm gonna give you $100. But if there is like a random dude in the street, I don't know who they are, I don't know what they've done, and they ask me for $100 now, and I give them like, and they will give me back like $1,000, I would not give them $100 because I don't trust them. So the question that you should ask yourself is what I'm doing building more trust? If the answer is no, then do something else. And then you should ask yourself, what is trust built upon? And for me, trust is about essentially like a triangle where you have like 3 sides. The first step is reliability. Second step is credibility. Reliability means if you say that you're going to do something, do you actually do it? Then the credibility part is, okay, is that person legit? Do they have social proof? So for example, like when you asked me to come on the podcast, yeah, I looked at your profile. I looked at what you were doing. I looked at one of the interview. I look, it was legit. So I was like, yeah, there is trust. So of course, I enjoy doing this. And for me, once you have like built a lot of trust and you understand, why people are doing things, then you should ask yourself, how do I build trust at scale? And today, in today's world, the best way to build trust at scale is to start writing content. For me, if you're like a founder and you don't write posts on LinkedIn or Twitter or even Instagram if you want, you're missing on a massive opportunity. Because right now, whenever even my sales rep and my team, like when they reach out to people and do their outreach campaign, the amount of time of people mention my content or the content of our team is just insane. It's insane because you reach millions of people by writing valuable content that people are going to see. And it's a simple way for you to have people see what's inside your brain, but at scale. So for me, you know, like the more you write, like, and the reality is, like, if you look at my reply rates and how it increased over time when we launched Lemlist, it really correlates with the increase in reach that I had through my post on LinkedIn. So at first, what I would do is just like post regularly. And eventually I starting like getting more and more traction. I would reach out to people who have engaged with my content, and the reply rate would go from, like 5 to 10% to maybe like 50% sometimes in some of my campaigns. And if you want to do like another bit, because there is something that I've discovered recently, is that social media platforms are full of lurkers that will never engage. And the biggest deals that I closed in the past. So let me tell you the story of how I discovered it. Essentially, when we closed like Zendesk, which is one of the biggest like support company in the world, it all started by a guy messaging me, telling me like, hey, I've watched your content for like 6 months. I saw that you also have like Freshdesk, which is their biggest competitor from India, as customers. I'd love to have a demo. And eventually, like, actually, no, it's the other way around. I reached out to them out of the blue because I wanted to close like bigger tech companies. And they replied that they were watching my content for months, which I was like, what the fuck? So when they told me that, I went through every single of my posts in the last 6 months. And you know what? Not a single like, not a single comment from the guy of Zendesk. So then I was like, what the fuck? And then what I realized is that if I look at the amount of views that I get on my profile versus the amount of like I get on my post or comments, I get actually maybe 100 times more profile views than I get likes and comments. And then that's insane. And here's the trick. What you can do now with Sales Navigator is that you can look in Sales Navigator, you have a filter that show me all the people that visited my profile in the last 90 days. So what I do is all these people who visited my profile, I know they look at my content, I know they watch all my stuff, I put them directly in a campaign and I started to reach out to them. And even though they had never engaged on my post, never commented, never liked, they knew who I was. They knew that my content was getting rich. They knew that everything I was saying actually made sense. And they answered because they wanted to meet me. And they knew that what I was doing was actually like helping the community. So for me, it's really about building that trust and then trying to grasp as many people. So the best way to do outreach is to have a combination of pull and push. Some people will obviously like reach out to you, but it's social media. It's the same. Like, you know what you mentioned at the beginning of the show. It's like, hey, like I was following you on Instagram for like 2 years, and then I make the connection between you and Lemlist. But here's the thing, like, like if you were like a follower and I have done my job properly, I should have reached out for being a guest on the podcast because the podcast is great. And that's the thing. Like sometimes we're missing opportunities.
And like a lot of your followers are tire kickers to begin with. So like the majority of them may not interact or buy anyway. So it's going to be the people on the peripherals. But it's not even like, it also works from a social proof perspective. Like that's like fucking literally insane, right? To see that someone's sitting on the side. And I'm well actually aware of that, but it's like seeing it in motion. But what another thing I look at it too is like, if you do sign a client or you do sign a customer in your instance, they'll usually validate before getting on the call or saying yes by checking you on social anyway. So if this is the start of getting them into the funnel, it's basically like they land on your page and realize you're not a robot. And that is like the ultimate combination, because like at the end of the day, people want to realize that you're literally not a robot. And it's the best way to do it. And I've several clients that we're working through this process with at the moment. And they're like, yeah, they're content businesses, right? So they sell like info products or learning products, so on. And they're hesitant to do it. And I'm like, it's not like someone will read a post and then just buy. But what they will do is they'll get to, actually you'll find this quite interesting. If you're familiar with a guy called Daniel Priestley, guy you should definitely check it, very big on Instagram, yeah, very big on LinkedIn. So he's wrote several different books called Oversubscribed and Key Person of Influence. And you're really a key person of influence. You've kind of built that trust. He has a fucking great stat, which is like people need to consume about 7 hours of content with you before they purchase. So let's give the example of a podcast. You could listen to 7 episodes of kickoff sessions and be ready to purchase. Or if it's your post on LinkedIn, that could be a year of reading to get to the 7 hours. And at that point, then they're ready to get on the call, right? So it's like, again, it goes back to cause, effect, and time. Everyone thinks cause and effect, but they don't realize the time delay in it. And when you're a bootstrap and you don't have all these obligations, or when you have like your costs covered, you can kind of play the long game, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
For you guys too?
And I think like, I think podcasts and videos are extremely powerful, because like the day like you start seeing people, the day like you start listening to what they say, their tone of voice, because sometimes, you know, like when you write, people might not notice that it's actually a joke. People might not understand it. But if you're listening to people, like I'm guessing that, you know, like if people have been listening to this like 50 minutes of podcast so far, they already have an impression. Like they understand whether or not like they like us, whether what we say is relevant, like they have their opinion. And I think like the more you help people forming an opinion about yourself, about what you can deliver, the easier it is to build trust. And the more trust you have with people, the easier it is later on like to do business together. Because the reality is like, for us, if someone is not getting more money, and it's the same for you, like if the people you work with don't get more money one way or another, it's a fail. It's a fail for you. It's a fail for me. Like it's not something we want. So what people need to understand is that they are using the right tool, that they can have access to the right content, that they can have access to the right people. So eventually they can succeed. And for me, like once you make sure that people are convinced about that, then everything becomes easier.
I had a call with I had a podcast with a guy called Matt Shields. He's built 7 different agencies and made 7 million across 7 of them to prove that it wasn't a joke or it wasn't a fluke. And he actually went to scale an agency with acquisition.com. So he applied to go to acquisition.com and with Hormozy. And I was like, oh, were you not kind of pissed off? He had the calls. He went through all the sales calls. And I was like, were you not kind of pissed off that you were not interviewed by him? And he was like, no, not at all. He was like, I didn't presume it. Just like when people come through and interview to come in or to do a discovery call for my company, they don't get access to me. So it's kind of similar to you, right? You're the one that's building the brand and the trust and so on. And people may not even ever come to interact with you. Well, I know they can, but they may not ever have to come and interact with you, and you can still make those sales. And I think that can be a big kind of issue for some founders, because they're like, oh, well, you know, I'm not really customer facing, I'm just building this product, and I'm even like, you know, a really big CEO and we don't interact with them. But it's like those small nuances, I call it the intangibles. It's stuff that you find very difficult to measure, which is kind of why people look down on branding so much. Not so much, but there's a negative connotation, because they're like, well, we could just run a fucking ad, and as a result they don't realize the benefit it can be.
And to double down on what you were saying, it's like I think that's why video is also so important. If you go on Lemlist, like you're going to see, like I'm introducing the product, I'm doing like, I think a video demo. And, you know, like if you go on a website, let's say to buy like, I don't know, clothes or anything, and you feel like the website is maybe a little bit dodgy, or there is one thing that feels weird. Maybe there is a glitch on the website and you're like, should I put my credit card on that website? But then if you see like a video of someone who's the founder or who's like explaining something, etc., and then you check the name and you look that person is real, that they are actually like writing good content, or they are talking about stuff. For example, even if it's fashion, like the guy can have like an Instagram account where he shows like different ways to wear like shirts or whatever. Eventually, you have trust because you know that there is a real person behind it. And I think in a world where everything can be automated, everything can be like done from a computer anywhere in the world, having this human touch is actually like game changer. And I think like too many people, especially in the software world, believe that human and people are like useless and everything should be automated. For us, it's something we're like tripling down. Like we have customer support, for example. Like if you ask me what's one of our differentiator, I would tell customer support, because we serve exactly the same way, like the small customers to the big one. We answer very quickly. We have like a dedicated team to help people being onboarded, understand, etc. Like, and that, you know, like that's not something you can copy because it's part of human.
100%.
And you know, like Peter Thiel,
and man, that's what people want as well, right? No, go ahead. You were mentioning
Peter Thiel, you know, he was saying like competition is for losers. And I really like that. And for me, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't compete. It's just like you should focus on what makes you different. And for me, the best way to be different is to be unique. And to be unique, you just got to be yourself. You know, like we all have sometimes like different combination. So for example, yes, I love software, but I also love triathlon. I also love like different things. And eventually, you know, like the moment you start sharing the unique things that's part of your life, the broader the audience you get. Or sometimes, you know, people discover a new like facet of your personality and they connect a lot better. So for me, I think like we shouldn't hide behind who we are. We should like show to the world, you know, like how we can help people and just be ourselves. Because in the end, when we build a company, you want to be like surrounded with people who you get on well. You want to help the people that you get on well with. Like, I don't want to help. Like, if a customer is a jerk, even if they want to pay like $1 million per year, we're not going to work with them. Like, that's out of the way, like directly. So building a business is hard. Don't make it harder and find like shitty customers.
Of course. And man, that's always the case, right? It's like it's 80-20. It's like one bad apple can infect the entire place. It can affect your culture too, right? I've even observed that myself. Just like guys being down as a result of like negative feedback, or just, I would just say like disrespectful feedback. You mentioned a really good point about the human to human touch. And it's something that I'm massive on. I have loads of questions for you off that. On the human side, even thinking about like AI and tech and moving forward in automation, the way I'm positioning like podcasting and is the art of communication. And I feel like the art of conversation is like we're losing that. It's like a lost form, right, of how we converse with each other. So I'm basically trying to like bring that back, and it's a philosophy in our business that, hey, like you can automate everything, but you can't automate this, right? And that's what people are seeking. People seek the connection. Now, when I use Lemlist, I know you started implementing AI and AI writing and AI assistance. How do you think how's it going so far? And do you think that will kind of mimic human touch to some degree?
I think like it's very difficult to predict like where AI is going to go. It's, to be honest, like 2 years ago, everyone was like, well, it's never going to replace a human. And now we're like, oh, I actually can't tell the difference if it's been automated or if someone actually spent like an hour like reading all the posts that I've written. So for me, I think like what's the most important and why I love AI is that it removes the blank page. You know, like whenever you're like staring at a blank page and you don't know where to start. So for me, I think like AI will get better over time. I don't know how much time it will take, but it will get better. And eventually I do feel that we need to see it as a human enhancer and not as a human replacement. Because for me, it's like whenever you have AI and you start writing things, if AI can help you make it sharper, make it more understandable, make it in a better tone of voice from your audience, or even better, you know, like when it comes to targeting, this is something we want to start implementing. It's like smart campaigns. So for example, you're going to tell me that your target market are executives at tech companies in the marketing department. That's pretty specific, but maybe, like what we're going to do is start reaching out to a lot of exec at working in marketing at tech companies. And then what we realize is that the people who reply to you are actually the ones that have a marketing budget over 2 million, that have more than 50% growth on social media follower in the last 3 years. And that's more and more criteria. And by understanding this through AI, we can recreate sub-campaigns automatically to narrow down even more your target audience. So you don't have actually to reach out to thousands of people, but you can reach out to 100 and get 80 meetings booked. Because my goal down the line is to reduce as much as possible like spam and, wrong targeting. And the vision, of Lempire overall is like, you have a great idea and a service that solves a specific problem. There are a lot of people having this problem, but it's sometimes difficult to know who they are, where they are, etc. Can we be the connector from your great idea and service and these people who have a problem? And I think AI can really help you do that.
That's super interesting, man. So it's like taking the extra data points that you would forget yourself. Like I give an example there of the social media growth. Now I know LinkedIn Sales Navigator tries to do something similar, which is like, oh, you've posted recently or something. But there are things that you wouldn't observe or you wouldn't be able to articulate in Lemlist or, in specific sales automation platforms. You would need to go and do that work basically. And that's what runs into a lot of issues, right? So it's basically like a way to be more specific, less about how to replace how you write things, maybe improve and enhance it. Because not even if you get really good at GPT, you can make your writing better, but sometimes you can't. Right? If I just threw in a post, it would compare it to like a shitty novel, right? But it wouldn't tailor it for LinkedIn. Does that make sense? It's like the knowledge base that it's trained on needs to kind of know like how to be specific, basically. Which as you said, it's going to take time. It's just going to be longer in that process. Now, question for you off that is, I've asked a lot of people that are kind of, I wouldn't say like spearheading it, but are just definitely thinking ahead with this stuff with products and services, is like, how do you make yourself AI proof in that instance?
In what sense? Like
sales, marketing, product. So like, let's say you're coming in to build the next couple of years, and like, what are those kind of skills that you need to be, I guess, AI proof? Now it's kind of different for a founder, but even for like employees, right? Because we've seen like companies get rid of copywriters, get rid of marketing executives, get rid of designers, get rid of editors to go 0 to 1 and to stay at 1 for their current process, basically.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the fine line is I think the way we create is going to evolve. We went from creating from blank pages and building up to being able to have like something that can create for us and where we can pick what the right way. But here's the thing. If ChatGPT writes you like 50 hooks, because it can write 50 hooks or 100, how do you pick the hooks for your social media post? For me, I think this is how you are like AI proof. The AI proof means you still need to be skilled and knowledgeable about a specific topic if you want to be good with AI. I think like people who are average will always be average with AI because they're not going to be like, I've seen it. I've seen people create content with AI. I've seen people like using like pre-written prompt, etc. And eventually like what they do is that they create something that's average because the input, which is their knowledge and how they see things, is average. So for me, it's like what you need to be AI proof is to be extremely good at noticing what good looks like. And what I've noticed is that it's very tough for people to know this, because to know this, you need experience. And experience is something you can't buy. So if you want to know what hooks will work best in your next social media post, you need to have posted at least 100 times.
If you're familiar with Dakota Robertson, he describes it as you need to be the orchestrator. So if you're at a play, there's a guy at the front who's running the entire show, but he doesn't play every instrument, right? He's the orchestrator. He pieces it together. And the beauty of that is the fact that when you are a good writer, you can make your writing better. But if you don't know what good writing is, you're fucked. And that's the same with DALL-E, the new tool. So we do a lot of design work, let's put it that way, a lot. Now, we started using DALL-E to do thumbnails. And we would see some of them being like really good, really bad, but we can decipher between which is good and which is bad, and then give it to designers to make it that one bit better. Does that make sense? So our click-through rate is actually a lot higher because we eliminated 24 hours of concept design and basically like art, as that's basically what you're doing every single time over. And we're able to get up to 90%. And then the other 10% is just like branding, colors, schemes, a few small changes, because that's what we're trying to get to. And initially when we looked at it, it was like, this will never make sense. But I think we did it for about 3 weeks straight. And now like the model is like familiar with our process, and there we have it. It's done. Now we still have the designer because we're still going to need a designer, right? But it's just a small extra bits.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's all about like knowing what good looks like eventually, like picking up the right and being the orchestrator. I love that image.
It's a nice little analogy. I want to finish up with some of your influences, like who have kind of influenced you. I know you mentioned Justin Welsh in his writing through your content, which has been really cool. He's been on my show a few times. He's a great guy. Like, he's unbelievable for young people coming through. But some of your influences in product, even in content, because you do, again, many different stuff, right?
Yeah, I like the approach of Jason Fried from Basecamp. I think is really smart in the way you approach things. I think his way of thinking is pretty unique. I love Naval Ravikant. So it's like for me, is one of the smartest guy alive as a philosopher and business guy. So I think it's quite nice. When it comes to like SaaS in general, I also like Jason Lemkin. I think like. He has like really good knowledge and he's been in the SaaS space for really like a long time. Kyle Porter also from OpenView. Elena, who was VP growth at Dropbox. I forget her last name, but she's like also like publishing really like in-depth content. I think there is something like a newsletter called Sakra also, which is really good when it comes to like insights about industries, etc., etc. So to be honest, I follow like a few people and I love to read like articles and blog posts. When it comes to also like the journey in itself, the delivering happiness from the founder of Zappo, I think it was really nice. I really love like these entrepreneurial stories with like the ups and downs. When it comes to like why you should bootstrap and be owner of your company, I think Ren Fishkin is also like a really good one. Ren Fishkin, he was like the founder of Moz, which was like a SEO platform, and he wrote a book that's called Shit, I forgot. I don't know why I forgot the name. Let me double check. Lost and Founder, yeah. Lost and Founder, it's a really good book because it goes through like in full transparency with how, he went from raising funds, getting an offer from HubSpot to be acquired, having investors saying that it was not the right offer, to the company starting plateau and declining because of the market in which he was, to him getting fired of his own company. Like, so it's just like crazy. And I think we don't realize like, it's because we see like in a lot of press article, like TechCrunch, etc., like always who's raising like the most amount of money. And especially like in 2020, 2021, like capital was like so easily accessible, like money was free. So everyone would raise, everyone would do like these crazy rounds. But what people don't talk about is the rounds and the valuation are just like the tip of the iceberg. What matters is really like the terms, because if you have people that can fire you, if you have people that have all the voting rights, if you're just like CEO, but you can't decide exactly like what you're going to do, and every single decision must be approved by the board, it's not your company anymore. Like it becomes something very different. And I think this is the hardest part. So yeah, another like good book and inspiring on my journey.
Man, I'd love to record like an entire podcast around like your thoughts on like VCs and like valuations with you, because I'm like very much in a similar position. Like when I was leaving the trading world, I was told, hand on my heart, I was in Singapore and I was told that with a slide deck, I could get access to just any funds. And I was like, that's a fucking red flag right there. And that was in 2021, 2022. They were like, you want to build a trading product? They were like, we can get you a call. And I was like, oh, so like I had a product background, like, but not engineering background, right? And like that was the challenge, right? Is like, how the fuck do you build a global product with zero money and zero engineering experience? So that's what made it funny, and I love that lessons, man. From you, there's lots of them. So next podcast, I do really want to go down that route, and there's obviously 1,000 different ways. I think the next one will be in Bali or Cape Town.
I like that.
That's my goal.